I'm Chase Worthington.
I'm Michael Ab.
I'm Jack Jenkins.
I'm Eli Campbell. Our topics are in vitro fertilization and stem cell research, and we are now open for questions.
All right, well, let's start off with the obvious question. What's the controversy? Why are we talking about stem cell research and IVF? They seem to be two separate issues to me. You've got in vitro fertilization over here and stem cell research over here. Why are they connected together, and why are we talking about them?
So the main issue with IVF revolves around the ethics of taking the sperm and egg outside of the body and fertilizing them, as well as the question of what to do with the leftover embryos, which connects with stem cells, as those are used for research.
Okay.
Yeah, the main thing with stem cell research is that you need a embryo, and whenever you take the stem cell out, you are basically killing the embryo. So the question is, are you killing a potential human being, or does life begin at the embryonic stage, or like it's kind of the idea, when does life begin, and are we killing someone?
Well, that's a great question to start off with. Eli, when does life begin?
I don't know, but I would probably say at conception.
Conception, Jack?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that around there.
Okay.
I believe in conception.
So when sperm and egg come together, that's life, and okay, sacred from there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You said stem cell research relies completely on in vitro fertilization product. Is that
Not completely, but
Okay.
with stem cells, there are two different types, adult and embryonic, and
Okay.
embryonic is what you get from IVF.
okay? So we can just dispute this whole IVF issue if we just use adult stem cells. Is that what you're telling me, Michael?
Well, embryonic stem cells are the best to use because they're what's called pluripotent, which
Okay.
means that they can become any type of cell within the body. For instance, like a heart cell or skin cell,
Okay.
because they have not become specialized in the body yet, the stem cells. But the adult stem cells have become specialized already. So it's like a more difficult process to actually use them because it's what's called what is it? Induced.
Okay.
Yeah, induced pluripotency or whatever, which is like making them unspecialized again. So it's a lot easier to use embryonic stem cells.
Difficult but not impossible then.
Right.
So what would be the benefits of using embryonic cells?
Well, when you use embryonic cells, because of the medical potentials, like you could possibly heal injuries that were not capable, like spinal injuries, you can regrow the nerve cells, which don't naturally reproduce. And if you use a stem cell, you could program it to become a nerve cell. And in past cases, they've actually reproduced bone marrow. So it's like less complicated than a nerve cell, but it's shown that theoretically it's possible to grow much more complex cells.
So you mentioned in past studies these things have occurred. Have you guys done any research on other past studies to elaborate on any of those studies that you've done where embryonic cells have been used?
The only thing I've personally found in my research is the bone marrow. Everything else I've read is more theoretical. You know, the idea is there. We have an idea of what we can do, but it hasn't been executed quite yet. So.
Just because technology is not there yet?
Yeah, and it's still like very experimental. You know, we got to see what the drawbacks are, and what the just to make sure nothing bad happens.
How does the medical community weigh in on stem cell research?
Well, what I saw is that I looked to the Hippocratic Oath, which is taken, and it always talks about helping those who are sick. And and they say, there's actually a quote I have right here saying that I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. So when you read it like that, it's saying, I think that they would be all up for it, because if we can unlock that potential, we could prevent a lot of, or undo a lot of injuries that we can right now. So I'd say that the medical field is all for it.
Leah?
Yeah, the medical field's all for it, and they do look at it as like we need to help people, and even though they're kind of in a way destroying the embryo, they see it as research for future diseases that we can cure, that no other medicine can fix itself.
What about laws that are either state or federal related to stem cell research that you became aware of in your research?
They're thinking about lifting the ban in 2014, the NIH, on federal funding of, because they banned it.
They do.
The NIH on the funding, or the government funding on stem cell research because they didn't like the fact on like stem cell research on animals per se. They didn't want like grass, like a test animal to have part of the human kidney because we would use human stem cells as that product.
So the NIH banned the use of stem cells in research.
And like in 2014, they're thinking about lifting that ban.
Okay. NIH being the who?
National Institute of Health.
There you go. National Institute of Health. I seem to remember some larger government figure putting a limitation on stem cell research prior to that date. Can somebody elaborate on that for me?
I know that President Bush
There you go.
did put some regulations on it in the form of like regulating some spending that can be done on it.
Okay, so was President Bush?
I don't know actually.
You got a 50-50 shot at it. It's H.W. Bush. So President H.W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, sorry, the Prez, put some limitations on it. But back to Chase's point, what limitations did he say? No stem cell research can be done anywhere in the United States using embryonic stem cells?
I'm not sure.
I actually came upon, I believe, that some states, it's more of a state thing than federal. There's not a definite, if say, no whatsoever, but like when it comes to public and private, other than state constitutions are kind of what control that. Like for instance, I saw that California has banned, I'm pretty sure, all funding, but however, some states ban public funding. So it's more of like, what does the state think? It's kind of what they believe is right in this case.
Can the president tell a private company what it can do in its research facilities?
I didn't see anything about that in my research.
Okay.
I think so.
I think it ties back to what Chase was talking about. Who eliminated stem cell research?
The NIH was
The NIH. And who is the NIH?
National Institute of Health.
And who are they?
They were just like
Government funded? They're government funded research, right? So the president is certainly the head of the government. He has the ability, or the president at the time had the ability to cut off government funding to embryonic stem cell research, correct? So that would not necessarily affect what other kind of funding.
Right.
I was gonna get that horse to water. Sorry. All right, so we've talked about some government limitations. Let's talk a little bit about the moral and ethical implications of IVF and stem cell research. Tell me your personal feelings. I know we talked about when life starts, and I went through the whole panel, and you guys very quickly let me know where you feel like life starts. Tell me your feelings on, let's just say, the destruction of embryonic stem cell, or on IVF embryos for any reason.
I am against it because
Okay.
it could be a life that's starting.
Yes.
But the fact that tears in it makes me unclear on the thoughts because if we did not use them for research, then the doctors would probably discard it as medical waste.
Doctors would discard it, okay. Would discard IVF embryos as medical waste? Okay.
For me, I mean, stem cells, it's hard for me because I'm an IVF actually, and knowing what my mom went through, and it's really tricky for me, and I can't really form an opinion. I'm still taking time to do that.
I'm feeling that one.
See, I'm conflicted about that because I think in vitro fertilization, I think is great because it can provide people who don't have the chance to have a baby, but at the same time, those leftover embryos, I don't like the idea of it just being discarded or just kind of experimented on
Okay.
because it's like I'm all for medical research to potentially help cure things, but at the same time, I don't like the idea of killing a potential person.
Okay. Eli?
Like Chase said, there are basically two options when it comes to what you do with an embryo.
Okay.
You can either put it towards like experimentation or just throw it away. But there's also like freezing it for a long time, but that's
And when you say what you do, who is you?
the parents.
The parents. Okay, so the parents that we talked about, doctors earlier, but the parents have to say over
The parents.
embryos? Okay.
Yes. So I think that it's best, I mean, obviously I don't like the killing of embryos, but if the choice is to either throw it away or put it towards research, which could potentially help somebody, you might as well put it towards research.
Okay. We do any statistics on IVF in general, and if a couple utilizes IVF, how many embryos typically are fertilized, how many embryos are typically left over, what our status of embryos in storage are currently?
Yeah, I think it's an estimate. I think it was 500,000 embryos that were that were being frozen. As far as how old, or what was the question? Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to know, do you know how many embryos are typically left over from an IVF cycle? What, you said 500,000 are currently, you think are in storage?
It depends on how many eggs they get fertilized in the lab.
Right.
And normally in an IVF cycle, they'll put about 3 as the max for that. So, you could have 5 that got fertilized. You would put 2 in storage for later use. Adoption is another option as well, or donating to stem cell research.
How long can they stay frozen before maybe they are no longer
I don't know
available for use?
I don't know the exact date. I know it's a fairly long time, but I don't know the exact date.
Do you know how many of them end up actually being used?
Not very many. I don't know the exact number, but
Okay, so we talked about fertilization, implantation, usually it's 2 to 3, right?
Yes, no.
That are implanted, anything left over has the option of being frozen. It's not automatically frozen, is that what I'm hearing?
they'll be frozen, and then once they're frozen, the parents can choose to put them up for adoption through snowflake or other.
To adopt the embryo?
Yes, another
Now-
couple will adopt the embryo, and then they will implant that in the other couple.
Okay. All right. Do you guys know of any legal ramifications that have come from, actually recently, from frozen IVF embryos?
I did not.
So, just a clarification, you were on point about NIH. So the umbrella organization governmentally in the United States is Health and Human Services. National Institutes of Health comes under Health and Human Services, okay? So talk to me about cloning. We know stem cell research and cloning and kind of what your thoughts are on that, good, bad, where you are with that.
Okay. Well, I came upon there like 2 major types of cloning: therapeutic cloning and reproductive cloning. Therapeutic is to help like reproduce more cells, in this case stem cells, to help treat an injury. However, reproductive cloning is like reproducing an entire animal, or in extreme cases, person. So when it comes to between the 2, the one that draws most of the controversy is reproductive, because you're creating a completely new being. And it's like a lot of people say, like, you're playing God and you shouldn't do that. So those are like the 2 main focal points.
And I can agree with that. I can't just see us just cloning humans. I just don't think it's right. I don't think you can just. I think it gets very out of hand if we get to that point.
Has there ever been a human clone?
I don't believe so.
Right. There is. In Great Britain. I forget her name. Yeah, but she's in her 20s or 30s now, so. And then there may have been more, I don't know. Soon we go ahead. I kind of know. Mike.
Yeah, I agree with Chase. I think when you get to reproductive cloning, it causes a lot of problems. I just don't agree with the person.
What do scientists say about what might be the benefits of reproductive cloning?
Well, therapeutic again, it's for reproductive cloning. Reproductive, I'm honestly not sure. Because I mainly focus on therapeutic because it related to stem cells, but yeah, I didn't do that much research for the actual reproductive, more therapeutic.
Let's jump a little bit. We're talking about therapeutic, Jack. I think that's a great place to focus in. Talk to me about the process of, we've said, okay, stem cells can be harvested and made into various different other types of cells, right? For therapeutic purposes. What's that process look like? Do I just take some stem cells and program them into something? Like, how does that work? How do we get from the stem cell itself and harvesting that stem cell up to some therapeutic application?
So the harvesting process is like, there's basically 2 kinds, which is like the bone marrow transplant, which most people are more familiar with, and then what's called the peripheral blood stem cell collection, which is basically like they hook a machine up to both of your arms and draw blood from one and run it through a machine that like extracts the stem cells and then puts the blood back in you. And then
These are adult stem cells, I'm assuming?
What's that?
Are these adult stem cells? Because this doesn't sound like
Yeah,
IVF.
yeah,
really.
that's
Okay.
adult stem cells. And
I'm sorry. You hooked two people up and blood went from one person to the other?
Yeah, and then for injecting, it is an injection into like the bloodstream or whatever specific organ it is. And I know they run like a series of like shocks kind of into it. I'm not sure exactly how it works to make it become the specific organ.
So with embryonic stem cells, what are we doing there? Are we just extracting cells from an embryo and then injecting it into somebody and then it just takes over from there, or what's that process look like?
I mean, I know a little bit about it.
Okay.
I mainly focused on the ethical side, but whenever I saw it, it talked about therapeutic stem cells, in which it would, you know, and it's still very theoretical at the time. So it's when, I'm pretty sure, it's whenever you inject stem cells, like reprogrammed stem cells, in this case, induced pluripotent stem cells, so that they will become that kind of cell. And it's still very theoretical, and even like the FDA, they allow clients to be injected with them, but they have to be their own personal stem cells. They can only be used to produce their normal functions, like not anything crazy.
Are there any dangers related to IVF or stem cell research?
I came upon one in which it stated that they're still having trouble trying to make it so that that stem cell can turn into another type of cell, or like rapid reproduction, such as a tumor. They want to make sure that they avoid that, which is kind of what's holding them back at the moment when it comes to therapeutic stem cell research.
Yeah, the biggest side effect to it are tumors, because like there isn't really anything to tell the stem cells to stop dividing and like making more of themselves. So it's mostly benign tumors, and there also are like minor flu-like symptoms for the harvesting and like, I think just the harvesting part of stem cells.
Is there anything in the scriptures related to stem cell research or IVF that you are aware of or have come across?
Well, I came upon one which comes upon the idea of, you know, some people view it as, you know, okay, we can kill an embryo to get stem cells for research. And what it said was Romans 3:8, which says, why not say, as some slanderously claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result. Their condemnation is just. So it kind of like hints at the idea of saying, okay, you're doing an evil to produce something good, in this case, medical treatments. And it's like saying you shouldn't do evil to produce good. So it's kind of if you view it as killing a potential human being, then you shouldn't do it in the first place. That's the main thing I saw that really attracted my attention, was it could possibly shut down a Christian perspective of stem cell research.
How many people right now are using therapeutic stem cells, or how many patients are there in the U.S. that you know of right now? Is there a general number? Are people requesting this more to get repairs for certain organs that they need?
Just from the stuff that I researched, I feel like it is becoming more popular because the more people that are being tested, they're not really having too many side effects. And so more people are coming to it, like for say, knee replacements. When they inject them, they are getting better. And there's nothing really too bad happening to them. So I think people are feeling safer about it. So it's going to expand the whole process.
We talked a lot about embryos from IVF. Do we have any legal or medical concerns about embryos being created simply for stem cell research? So create them just to destroy them?
That was made.
I'm sorry?
Bush passed like 3 different bills that like dealt with the stem cells to
Which
regulate
Bush?
them. I'm not sure which one.
The other one.
But yeah.
Actually, it was George W. Bush, but you're right. Go ahead, Jay.
He said that they're basically, you can't have an abortion just for these stem cells.
Okay.
No research purposes allowed, just to like have stem cell research. In a way, we can't like a farm with these embryos.
Like an embryo farm just to harvest stem
Yes.
cells. Okay. You guys agree with that? Even if there's all these therapeutic purposes that we could get from these stem cells?